When we talk about the mind as a weapon, it's easy to dismiss that as just another metaphor. But if you step back and think about it, reality is undeniable. Every single thing you see around you, the buildings, the technology, systems we live under, was once nothing more than an idea in someone's head. Every success story, every innovation, every revolution started as a thought. And the opposite is also true. Wars, economic collapses, personal downfalls, these too are born in the mind, which means the mind itself is the origin point of both progress and destruction. That's why I say your mind is your weapon only if you take responsibility for training it. Now, here's the trap most people fall into. Underestimate just how powerful their mind actually is. They think thoughts are harmless, just mental chatter floating by. Thoughts are the seeds of reality. They're the architects of action. What you repeatedly think, you eventually believe. What you believe shapes the choices you make, and those choices determine the trajectory of your life. That's not philosophy, it's psychology. It's how human behavior operates at the deepest level. If you doubt that, just consider this: two people can face the same external reality. Say, collapse of a business, the loss of a job, or a personal betrayal, and one person will crumble while the other will adapt, rebuild, come back stronger. The difference isn't in the event. The difference is in the mind. This is where awareness comes in. Most people walk through life on autopilot, unaware that they are being shaped, moment by moment, by the thoughts they allow to take root. Outsource their mental landscape to the noise of the world, social media, advertising, gossip, fear, even inherited beliefs they never chose for themselves. But if your mind is a weapon, do you really want to hand it over to anyone who feels like pulling the trigger? Of course not. Awareness is the first act of taking that weapon back. Awareness says, I am not just a passive receiver of thoughts. I am the one who chooses which thoughts I cultivate and which I discard. And let's be honest, this isn't easy. We live in an environment designed to hijack our attention. The modern economy runs on distraction. Billions of dollars are spent every year to capture your focus, to direct your thoughts toward things that benefit someone else, not you. If you don't see your mind as a weapon, you will unknowingly let it be used against you. But if you do see it that way, if you become conscious of its power, then you can begin the process of sharpening it, protecting it, and using it deliberately. Awareness doesn't mean becoming rigid or closed-minded. On the contrary, it's about cultivating a flexible, adaptive, and resilient way of thinking. It means recognizing that every belief you hold should be examined, stressed, tested, and, if necessary, replaced. That's the same way the best investors, innovators, and leaders operate. They don't cling to a worldview out of pride or fear. Recognize that the mind, like a blade, only stays sharp if it's challenged and refined. First step in training your mind as a weapon is to acknowledge the simple truth it already is one. It is either working for you or against you every single day. There is no neutral ground. You're either using it consciously to shape your future, being shaped unconsciously by the forces around you. The choice is yours. And that brings us to a powerful closing thought. The world you live in tomorrow will be built on the thoughts you allow today. The most urgent question you can ask yourself is this: whose hand is really on the trigger of your mind? If awareness is the first step, discipline is the second. Because once you realize your mind is the most powerful tool you have, the next challenge is learning to control it. And that's where most people fall short. They think awareness alone is enough. They tell themselves, I know I should focus, but then they go right back to the endless loop of distractions. It's like owning a sword but never sharpening it, or worse, leaving it out in the rain to rust. The reality is simply If you don't discipline your mind, the world will discipline it for you, and not in your favor. Think about how the human brain has evolved. For most of history, attention was a survival mechanism. You paid attention to the rustle in the bushes because it might be a predator. You focused on gathering food, finding shelter, and keeping your tribe alive. But today, we live in an environment that exploits those same mechanisms. Notifications, advertisements, social media feeds, they're all designed to hijack your attention and keep you in a reactive state. And here's the danger. Every time you give in, you reinforce the habit of distraction, you weaken your ability to focus. And a weak mind, like a dull weapon, is of little use when it matters most. Discipline, then, is about creating the conditions where your mind can actually serve you instead of being pulled in 100 directions. It's the daily practice of choosing what to pay attention to and what to ignore. It's saying no more often than you say yes. It's deciding that your mental energy is too valuable to be spent on trivialities. People often resist this idea because it sounds restrictive. Think about it this way: a river only becomes powerful when its water is channeled. Without banks to contain it, water just spreads into a swamp. Discipline gives your mind its banks. It channels your energy so you can cut through challenges with force and precision. This is not about asceticism or perfection. It's not about cutting out every pleasure or distraction. It's about being intentional. It's about recognizing that every yes to something meaningless is a no to something meaningful. You don't train your mind by accident. You train it by deliberate choices repeated consistently. Over time, that consistency compounds, just like money compounds in an investment account. Few disciplined choices made daily. What you read, how you spend your mornings, who you surround yourself with, can transform the trajectory of your life. Now, let's bring this closer to home. Picture two people with equal intelligence and equal opportunities. One spends hours each day scrolling, reacting, consuming whatever comes their way. Other spends those hours learning, reflecting, building, and executing. 10 years down the line, those two people will not even seem like the same species. One will have built a mind sharp enough to create value, solve problems, and lead. Other will have dulled their blades so badly it can barely cut through their own confusion. That's the real cost of distraction, not just wasted time, but wasted potential. So discipline is not about deprivation. It's about power. It's the quiet strength of someone who is no longer at the mercy of every impulse or demand. And once you experience that kind of control, you see how rare it actually is. Most people are prisoners of their minds, shackled by habits of distraction. But a trained mind, a disciplined mind, free to focus, free to choose, free to build. And here's the thought I want to leave you with. If the strength of your weapon depends on how you wield it, then discipline is the grip. Without it, the blade slips from your hand. With it, you can strike with clarity and precision. So the real question is, are you holding your weapon, or is it holding you? Once you begin to discipline your mind, the next test is resilience. Because no matter how sharp your mental weapon becomes, we'll find ways to strike back. Setbacks, failures, unexpected losses, these aren't exceptions, they're guarantees. And in those moments, your mind will either fracture under pressure or adapt and grow stronger. Resilience is the difference. It's not just about surviving adversity, it's about transforming adversity into fuel. The problem is that most people think resilience is something you're either born with or not. Imagine it as a kind of natural toughness. But in truth, resilience is a skill. Something you build through repeated exposure to challenges and the discipline of how you respond to them. Think about muscles in the body. Don't grow in comfort. They grow when they're stressed, when they're torn, and then repaired. The mind is no different. becomes stronger only by being tested. But here's the key distinction. Not everyone grows from hardship. Some people get stuck in it. Difference isn't the size of the obstacle, it's the way the mind interprets it. A resilient mind doesn't see failure as final, sees failure as feedback. It asks, what can I learn? What can I adjust? Where is the opportunity hidden inside this difficulty? That shift in perspective is what allows people to rebound and even surpass their previous level. Without resilience, challenges break you. Resilience, challenges remake you. You can see this pattern throughout history. Great leaders, innovators, entrepreneurs, they all have stories of setbacks that would have ended most people. But what set them apart was their mental training. Didn't waste energy denying reality or wishing it were different. They accepted it fully and then asked how to move forward. That's the core of resilience, radical acceptance of what is, combined with determination to improve what can be. Psychologists call this cognitive reappraisal, the ability to reinterpret a negative event in a way that reduces its emotional impact and increases your capacity to act. Philosophers, especially the Stoics, described it centuries earlier, believe that suffering comes not from events themselves, but from the judgments we place on them. If you can change the judgment, you can change the experience. And if you can change the experience, you can change the outcome. This is an abstract theory. It's practical psychology. It's the mental training that keeps your weapon sharp when life tries to dull it. Resilience is not built in the big moments alone. It's built in the small ones, in the daily practice of facing discomfort rather than avoiding it. It's built when you choose discipline over distraction, when you keep commitments to yourself even when it's inconvenient, when you confront reality as it is rather than how you wish it to be. Time you do that, you lay another brick in the foundation of resilience. Then the storm comes, and it will. You're not shaken to the core. You may bend, but you don't break. The truth is, resilience is what allows all the other qualities of the mind to matter. Awareness without resilience collapses under pressure. Discipline without resilience burns out at the first setback. Resilience is the stabilizing force, deep-root system that keeps the tree standing even when the winds are violent. Without it, your weapon is fragile. With it, your weapon becomes unbreakable. And here's the thought I want to leave you with: life will not wait for you to be ready. Tests will come whether you prepare or not. So the only real choice you have is this: will you let adversity blunt your mind, or will you train yourself to let it sharpen you? Once you've built resilience, the question becomes, how do you keep sharpening your mind so that it doesn't stagnate? The answer is continuous learning. Because if the mind is your weapon, knowledge is the ammunition. And the more you gather, the more prepared you are for whatever life throws at you. I don't mean simply collecting information. Information is everywhere, so abundant that most of it becomes noise. What matters is how you process it, how you integrate it, and how you use it. Too many people confuse knowledge with wisdom. Read a book or watch a video and feel like they've grown. But knowledge on its own is inert. It sits there waiting, only becomes valuable when you engage with it, test it, apply it. That's where wisdom is born. You can spend your entire life consuming content and still never move forward if you don't take the extra step of reflection and action. The mind doesn't sharpen just by exposure, it sharpens by exercise. Think about it this way: every new idea you encounter is like a piece of steel against your blade. Sometimes it sharpens, sometimes it challenges. It even reveals flaws you didn't know were there. And that's the point. Strongest minds are not the ones that cling to what they already know, but the ones that actively seek out what they don't know. Embrace discomfort in learning, because they understand that the cost of ignorance is far greater than the cost of humility. But learning requires more than just curiosity. It requires a system. You need to create deliberate habits of learning. It could be reading, journaling, having conversations with people who think differently from you, or even exposing yourself to experiences that test your assumptions. Best thinkers treat learning like a discipline, not a hobby. They don't wait for wisdom to come by accident, they hunt for it. Create feedback loops, test, fail, learn, refine, repeat. Over time, those loops compound. What emerges is a mind that can see patterns others miss. And this is where learning intersects with resilience. Because often the most valuable lessons don't come from books or mentors, but from mistakes. Failure, if you let it, is the most efficient teacher you'll ever have. Every mistake is a data point. Every setback is feedback. Only if you train your mind to interpret it that way. Otherwise, it just becomes pain with no progress. Continuous learning isn't only about acquiring new knowledge. It's about extracting insight from every experience, good or bad. At the same time, you have to be careful. Just as a weapon can be misused, so can learning. If you only learn to confirm what you already believe, you're not sharpening your mind, you're dulling it. Real learning requires confronting ideas that make you uncomfortable, challenge your identity, that force you to admit you were wrong. That's the friction that creates growth. It's not easy, it's necessary. Because in a world that's constantly evolving, greatest risk isn't being wrong, it's refusing to update your thinking. So ask yourself, what kind of ammunition are you stocking your mind with? Is it shallow knowledge that clutters your thinking? Or is it tested, refined wisdom that gives you clarity and direction? Are you learning reactively only when life forces you to, or proactively when the test comes you're already prepared? These questions matter because your ability to learn continuously determines it's not just how you respond to today's challenges, but how you anticipate tomorrow's. Here's the closing thought: the world will keep changing whether you learn or not. Question is, will you be armed with the wisdom to shape it, or will you be disarmed by the ignorance of standing still? Knowledge is the ammunition for your mind, then emotional mastery is the ability to aim that weapon with precision. Because without control over your emotions, even the sharpest mind will misfire. You can be intelligent, disciplined, resilient, and knowledgeable. If you let anger, fear, envy, or pride drive your decisions, you'll sabotage yourself. Handing your weapon to a child, power without control, is dangerous, not just to others, but to you. Often think of emotions as separate from rational thought, but neuroscience shows us they're deeply intertwined. Emotional brain reacts first, and only afterward does the rational brain try to interpret. That means if you don't train your emotions, run the show, fear will convince you to avoid opportunities that could transform your life. Anger will push you into battles that were never worth fighting. Pride will keep you blind to your mistakes. In short, your emotions can either be the fuel that drives you forward or the chains that hold you back. The key here isn't to suppress emotions. Suppression doesn't work. It only buries them deeper until they explode in destructive ways. The key is awareness and mastery. It's about stepping back, observing what you feel, and creating the space between stimulus and response. That space is where control lies. That's where you can ask, what am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? And most importantly, is acting on this emotion aligned with my long-term goals? This kind of mastery requires practice. Just like lifting weights builds physical strength, confronting your emotions builds emotional strength. Every time you choose not to lash out in anger, every time you sit with discomfort, instead of running from it. Every time you resist the pull of immediate gratification for the sake of a bigger vision, you're training your emotional muscles. Over time, practice compounds into a calm, steady center that can withstand chaos without being consumed by it. Philosophers and spiritual traditions have been saying this for centuries. Stoics spoke about equanimity, the ability to remain steady regardless of external circumstances. The Buddhists talked about detachment, not in the sense of indifference, but in the sense of not being controlled by passing emotions. Modern psychology frames it as emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize, regulate, and channel emotions productively. The language varies. The principle is the same. The strongest minds are not the ones that feel nothing, but the ones that feel everything without being ruled by it. Let's connect this to the larger picture. Without emotional mastery, resilience becomes fragile. A setback may trigger panic or despair, undoing the progress you've made. Without emotional mastery, discipline collapses. A single impulse, a moment of anger or distraction, undo years of hard work. Without emotional mastery, even learning becomes distorted. You cherry pick lessons that validate your emotions instead of the ones that challenge them. Emotional mastery, then, isn't an optional refinement. It's the central control system of the mind. It's what ensures that all the training you've done actually works under pressure. And here's where it gets most powerful. Once you begin to master your emotions, you also begin to master your relationships. Because you're no longer reacting impulsively, you start to communicate with clarity. You can listen without defensiveness. You can negotiate without ego. You can lead without being consumed by pride or fear. People are drawn to those who project steadiness in uncertain times. That's what emotional mastery gives you, not just control over yourself, but influence over the world around you. So think of it this way: your emotions are energy. They're neither good nor bad in themselves. But unless you channel that energy, will scatter in directions that weaken you. With mastery, that same energy becomes force, focused, intentional, unstoppable. The thought I want to leave you with is this: if your mind is the weapon, then your emotions are the hand that steadies it. The steadier the hand, truer the strike. So the question is, are you in control of your emotions, or are your emotions in control of you? At this point, you might be thinking, if awareness, discipline, resilience, learning, and emotional mastery are all in place, what's left? The answer is direction. Because a weapon